He lifted his glass with a smug grin and said, "Loud enough for everyone to hear. How does it feel to be a loser living off your wife?" The whole table laughed, and my wife laughed the loudest. I leaned back in my chair and let that sound run over me. Their laughter felt like sandpaper against my skin. Each little chuckle seemed to scrape at my pride. The people around that table believed a simple story about me. In their eyes, I was a man who had nothing. I was the husband who followed his wife around like a shadow. A decoration, a name on her invitation card, someone she brought along so she could look perfect in public. They had no idea who I was. They had no idea what I owned. And they definitely had no idea what I was capable of. I stood up slowly, not in a rush, not angry on the outside. I adjusted my tie like I had all the time in the world. Then I looked straight at Richard Hayes, the CEO of Atlas Dynamics. I kept my face calm and my voice steady. "You have 24 hours to enjoy your position," I told him, "because this loser will be the one signing your termination papers." His smile vanished. The color drained from his face like someone pulled a plug. The room went silent so fast that it felt unreal, like somebody hit pause on the whole ballroom. I could hear my own heartbeat. I could hear the soft hum of the air system. I could hear a waiter stop walking behind us. And in that moment, I knew something important. I was done letting people write my story for me. If it were you, humiliated in front of the person you love, what would you do? Would you walk away quietly and swallow the shame? Or would you stand up and remind them exactly who you really are? The ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria looked like a shiny world made for rich people. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, huge and sparkling, like someone dropped expensive stars inside the building. Gold lights spilled everywhere, making white tablecloths look even whiter and silver forks look like mirrors. Crystal glasses stood in neat rows, so thin and delicate that they seemed too fragile for real life. Waiters in tuxedos moved between tables with perfect posture. They refilled drinks and smiled politely. They laughed at jokes they had probably heard 100 times. The air smelled like perfume, fresh flowers, and expensive food. The guests were executives, managers, investors, and people who liked saying words like synergy and quarterly goals. Across the room, my wife, Emily, looked radiant. She wore an emerald gown that caught the light whenever she moved. She was standing with a group of her coworkers. She was laughing, head tilted back slightly, relaxed and confident. One of her manicured hands rested on a man's arm. A friendly touch, casual, like she belonged right there in the middle of the power circle. I watched her for a moment. She looked like she was exactly where she wanted to be. She had that special smile she used at these events. Not the private smile she gave me at home when she was tired. This was the corporate smile. The polished smile. The one that said she belonged among important people. I took a sip of whiskey. It tasted like burnt oak and disappointment. I did not feel like I belonged there. And it was not because I lacked money or confidence. I felt like I was standing outside my own life, watching my wife live in a world that did not include me. A long time ago, I used to be part of that world. 15 years earlier, I had been the one people watched. I had been the man whose decisions moved numbers and changed futures. I had been the one who spoke and made a room quiet. But I stepped away. I did it by choice. I chose peace. I chose privacy. I chose a life that did not need applause. For years, I stayed quiet. I let Emily build her career. I let her shine. I let her coworkers think whatever they wanted about me. I told myself it did not matter. Tonight it mattered. The truth was simple. They did not know me. Not really. And tonight, their ignorance was about to cost them. A voice cut through the soft hum of conversation, sharp and loud like a knife tapping glass. "Jack, get over here, buddy." Chad Wilson was calling me over. He waved like he owned the room. His smile was wide and confident. It was the kind of smile a man wears when he has never been told no. Chad had a certain way about him. He was charming on the surface, the type who made small talk look easy. But behind that charm was arrogance. He liked to test people. He liked to push. He liked to make himself feel bigger by making someone else feel small. Near him stood Richard Hayes, Atlas Dynamics CEO. Richard looked perfect in a midnight suit, champagne glass in his hand, posture straight, hair neat, smile ready. Around them were a few other executives, name tags on their jackets, expensive watches on their wrists, laughter that sounded practiced. Emily walked up to me and slipped her arm through mine, guiding me toward them. She had her corporate wife smile on, the one that never cracked. She looked beautiful and professional at the same time. When we reached the circle, Chad raised his glass like he was about to give a toast. "So tell me, Jack," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "what's it like being married to Atlas Dynamics' rising star?" He nodded toward Emily, like she was a trophy he had discovered, like she was a prize to show off. I kept my expression neutral. Chad leaned in slightly, his eyes playful. "Must be nice having a sugar mama." A ripple of laughter passed through the group. It was light, like they wanted it to feel harmless. Like a joke, like something I should just smile at. Emily did not flinch. She laughed too. That was the first cut. And Chad, like any predator who smells blood, did not stop. He swirled the champagne in his glass and looked at me with fake curiosity. "I mean, seriously, Jack, what do you even do all day while Emily is out here killing in the business world?" "Watch Netflix. Play video games." The circle erupted again, louder this time. A couple people at nearby tables even turned their heads to see what was so funny. Emily's grip on my arm tightened, but when I looked at her face, I did not see anger on my behalf. I did not see discomfort. I did not see her trying to stop it. I saw the same polished smile, like this was harmless fun and I was supposed to take it. Richard Hayes gave a polite chuckle, the kind of laugh someone gives when they're not sure if they should laugh. He looked like he wanted to redirect the conversation, to keep things smooth. Maybe we should, Richard started. Chad, wave him off. No, I'm genuinely curious. Then Chad locked eyes with me. Jack seems like a nice enough guy, but let's be real. And then he delivered the line like he was proud of it. What's it like being a loser, having your wife pay all the bills? The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. It rolled over me in waves. It filled the air and bounced off the walls. It made my chest feel tight. And standing there, I felt something cold settle deep inside me. For a heartbeat, the room seemed smaller. The lights felt hotter. The air felt heavier. 15 years of staying quiet came crashing into a single moment. But the worst part was not Chad. The worst part was Emily's laughter. Not nervous. Not forced. Real laughter. Like what he said was a perfect punchline. I let the noise wash over me. I kept my posture loose. I kept my face calm. I did not shout. I did not storm away. I did not beg for respect. Inside, something shifted. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the years of being treated like a guest in my own marriage. Maybe I was simply done. I straightened my shoulders. A few people noticed. The laughter started to falter, not because they felt guilty, but because they sensed a change. Like the room itself knew something was about to happen. My eyes found Richard Hayes. He was still holding his glass, frozen in that half-laugh state. You know, Richard, I said evenly, it must seem strange from where you're standing. The room began to quiet. But I wonder how it feels to know that this so-called loser owns 90% of Atlas Dynamics. Silence. The words landed like a brick through glass. Richard froze completely, his champagne glass suspended halfway to his lips. The color left his face. Under the warm chandeliers, he looked pale and suddenly older. Emily's arm slipped away from mine like her body forgot how to hold me. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, eyes wide, as if she thought she misheard. Chad's smug grin collapsed into confusion. His eyebrows knitted together. He looked like he was trying to solve a math problem that did not make sense. Emily's voice came out small and shaky. What? I looked around the circle, around the table, at the faces that had been laughing seconds ago. Did I stutter? My tone stayed calm, but the words carried weight. You remember Orion Systems? I asked Richard. That tech startup that merged with Atlas Dynamics 5 years ago. The one that pulled you back from bankruptcy. Recognition flickered in Richard's eyes. Not full understanding yet, but fear was already there. That was mine, I said. Still is actually. Emily's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Red wine spread across white linen like a stain that could not be ignored. The sound snapped the room into a stunned silence. Then the whispers started. People leaned toward each other. Chairs scraped. Heads turned. Conversations broke into small, shocked pieces. I'd said enough. I adjusted my tie again, straightened my jacket. Then I stepped back from the table. Emily's eyes followed me. She looked like she was watching a stranger. She did not speak. Richard was still rooted in place, gripping the stem of his glass like letting go would make this real. Chad demanded to know if what I said was true, but his voice sounded weak now. I turned toward the exit. The marble floor amplified every step I took. Each step felt like a statement. Behind me, voices rose. Richard sounded panicked. Emily called my name. Someone else asked questions. Someone laughed, nervously like they did not know what to do. I did not look back. If they wanted answers, they would have to work for them. Tonight, I was done standing in the corner while everyone else wrote my story. It was time to tell it myself. When I pushed through the ballroom doors, the noise dimmed. The hotel lobby felt calmer, softer, like a different planet. The marble gleamed under warm lights. Tourists checked in. Business travelers rolled suitcases. A pianist played something gentle in the distance. I walked toward the revolving doors, hands in my pockets, moving with purpose. Then I heard it. Quick clicks of heels on stone. Jack, wait. Emily's voice cut through the lobby noise. She sounded breathless. I did not slow down. If anything, I walked faster. Jack, damn it. Stop. There was desperation in her tone. Real desperation, the kind I'd not heard in years. Not since the night her father had a heart attack. I heard her stumble. Those expensive heels were not made for running. Then she caught up and grabbed my arm. Her fingers clamped down hard and spun me halfway around. Her breathing was ragged. Her emerald gown was slightly creased from a chase. A perfect strand of hair had slipped loose from her twist. Her eyes were sharp and searching. What the hell do you mean you own the company? She demanded. She stared at me like she was looking for a joke, like she needed me to smile and admit it was all a prank. I stayed still for a moment. I did not answer right away. I let the weight of her grip sink in. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Then I looked at her. Her flawless makeup was starting to smudge beneath her eyes. She looked angry, but underneath the anger was fear. Fear of not knowing. You really don't know, do you? I said quietly. Don't be cryptic with me right now, she snapped. Explain how you can possibly own 90% of Atlas Dynamics when you have been unemployed for the past 3 years. Unemployed. The word hit me like a slap. Not because it was new, but because she said it so easily. Like that was my official label. That's what you think I've been doing? I asked, sitting at home while you bring home the bacon. I let out a humorless laugh. Well, what else would you call it? She shot back. She was loud enough that a few people in the lobby glanced at us. I stepped closer and lowered my voice, so only she could hear. I would call it building a life that did not need to show off, and letting you believe whatever story made you feel bigger. She crossed her arms, trying to protect herself with posture. You haven't had a real job since you sold that little software company back in the day, she said. That little software company I cut in was Orion Systems. And I did not just sell it, Emily. I merged it with a failing tech firm called Atlas Dynamics. Her face went pale. I could see memories try to rise up. Conversations from years ago. Things she half heard, half ignored. Words she did not store because she did not think they mattered. That's impossible, she whispered, but she did not sound confident. Orion Systems was not a hobby project. I continued. The merger saved Atlas from bankruptcy. It was worth hundreds of millions. Her lips parted. No words came. It is worth hundreds of millions, I corrected. Present tense. Because I never sold my shares. I stepped away from day-to-day operations. I let Richard run the show while I focused on other things. Other things like what she demanded. I held her gaze. Like being your husband. Like making sure the bills were paid. Like supporting your career while everyone assumed I was just along for the ride. Emily stared at me, and for the first time her executive mask slipped. She looked less like a confident rising star, and more like a woman trying to hold two realities at once. All those times I introduced you as someone who used to work in tech, she murmured. All those dinner parties where I joked about you being retired at 45. I said nothing. I let her hear her own words. You never corrected me, she said. Her voice was thinner now. Because I want to know if you love me for me, I replied. Not for my money. Not for a title. Not for the numbers on paper. Her eyes glistened. She did not look away. If that's true, then why tell me now? I stepped closer, voice low and steady. Because tonight you laughed, Emily. You laughed when Chad called me a loser. You laughed when they mocked me. After 15 years together, you did not defend me once. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to speak, but for the first time in years, I did not wait for her words. I turned and walked away. I left her standing there with her perfect dress and her broken certainty. For years I'd stayed silent. I told myself I was being mature. I told myself I was protecting our marriage from money and ego. I told myself I did not need attention. But the truth was darker. I had been shrinking so she could feel bigger. I reached my car, opened the door, and sat in the driver's seat. The quiet wrapped around me. The adrenaline faded, and something colder took its place. This was not just about pride. It was about respect. Respect I deserved. Respect I had not seen in a long time. Not from her. Not from the people around her. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus, my lawyer. When he answered, I did not waste time. It's time, I said. He paused. He knew what I meant because we had talked about it years ago. We had talked about what would happen if I ever decided to step out of the shadows. Marcus exhaled. You sure you want to do this now? He asked. Yes, I said. Prepare for a full financial audit of Atlas Dynamics. Executive compensation. Expenses. Conflicts of interest. Everything. Are you sure you want to shake the hive? He asked again. I smiled without warmth. Yes. They have mistaken my silence for weakness. I am done being invisible. Back home, I went straight to my office, the one room Emily almost never entered. She called it my man cave. She assumed it was where I wasted my days with hobbies and random projects. She never bothered to look deeper. I walked to the bookshelf and pressed a hidden latch. A panel swung open and revealed a fireproof safe built into the wall. Inside were the documents that mattered. Contracts, merger papers, ownership certificates, legal records, things that proved reality, even when people refused to believe it. I pulled out a thick folder labeled Atlas Holdings and spread the papers across my desk. Every page told the same story. Jack Morgan was the majority owner of Atlas Dynamics. Not Richard. Not the board. Not the executives who laughed at company dinners. Me. I ran my fingers over Richard Hayes' signature dated 15 years ago. That day was burned into my memory. Richard had come to me desperate. Sweat had soaked through his expensive suit. His voice had trembled even though he tried to act confident. Our company is failing, he had said. If this merger does not work, we are finished. At the time, I was building Orion Systems fast. We were growing. We were winning contracts. We were innovating. I had choices, but the offer from Atlas was too big to ignore. I saw what Atlas could become if it were cleaned up and pushed in the right direction. I also saw how badly they needed help. I agreed, but not in a way that made me vulnerable. I did not just buy a failing company. I structured the deal so Atlas could survive while I kept control. 90% ownership, full voting rights, veto power over major decisions. Richard got to keep his CEO title. He got to keep his salary. He got to keep his status. The employees kept their jobs. Everyone thought Richard was the hero. Everyone thought some mysterious investor had saved the day. Very few people knew the truth. And those who did were locked into confidentiality agreements so tight they could not breathe without permission. To keep my involvement quiet, I created a blind trust. My shares were held under a private investment firm. My identity did not show up on public records. To the world, I was nobody, just a retired guy, a supportive husband. I did that on purpose. I wanted peace. I wanted a normal life. I wanted to know that Emily loved Jack, not Jack Morgan the owner. For years, it worked. I collected dividends quietly. I lived comfortably. I stayed out of boardrooms. I stayed out of headlines. Emily built her career on top of the foundation my merger created. She worked hard. She earned promotions. She became a rising star. But somewhere along the way, she started believing the same story her coworkers believed, that I was nothing. Tonight, that story ended. Marcus worked through the night. He had contacts inside the company, people who knew how to pull records, people who could find the truth hiding under layers of polite reports. By morning, the first findings came in. Executive compensation packages that were obscene, expense accounts filled with luxury dinners and private trips disguised as client entertainment, vendor deals that looked suspicious, patterns of favoritism and nepotism, contracts steered toward friends and family, decisions made for personal gain, not for the company's future. Richard Hayes had grown comfortable. Too comfortable. He believed the mysterious investor would never look too closely as long as profits were steady. He was wrong. I sat back in my chair and read through the first report. I did not feel surprised. I felt calm. Because this was what happens when people think nobody is watching. They take more. They push further. They forget fear. I drafted a formal request and sent it to the board. A full breakdown of executive spending. A list of conflicts of interest. A timeline of vendor decisions. I demanded everything. Then Marcus prepared a notice for an emergency board meeting. This was not a request. It was a command. Word spread faster than fire. Within hours, Chad Wilson got called into HR. The official reason was review of conduct at corporate events. The real reason was simple. My audit was already forcing people to look at behavior and ethics with new eyes. Chad had always been protected by charm and connections. Now he was exposed. I leaned back and let the idea settle in my mind. The man who mocked me was about to learn a brutal lesson. You never know who is listening. You never know who has power. Richard tried to play it smooth. He emailed Marcus and me, polite words, friendly tone, offering to discuss concerns privately. He suggested we handle it quietly. I replied with one short message. No exceptions. I want all documents on my desk by 5. The board meeting stays scheduled. Behind closed doors, whispers turned into panic. Employees noticed security moving differently. Managers started talking in hushed voices. People wondered if layoffs were coming or if something bigger was happening. In the middle of the chaos, Richard realized something. He was not the one calling the shots anymore. The real owner had arrived. By afternoon, Marcus's contacts fed us more details. Security escorted Chad Wilson out of the building. Evidence connected him to steering contracts toward his cousin's construction company. Not the kind of mistake you can laugh off. Not illegal enough to end in handcuffs, but unethical enough to destroy careers. 2 more executives faced suspension. Personal expenses had been charged to corporate cards. Vacations disguised as business trips. Vendor deals with kickback patterns. Richard's grip was slipping fast. I watched the pieces fall into place. Years of bad culture were unraveling, thread by thread, because one quiet man decided to pull the loose end. My phone buzzed. Emily. Her message came in fast and frantic. Everything is falling apart here. Chad got fired. The whole office is freaking out. Richard looks like he might collapse. Call me. I stared at the screen for a moment. I did not call. I typed back a simple line. Typical day at Atlas. Nothing to worry about. But we both knew it was not typical. This was the beginning of a reckoning. Marcus called again with urgent news. The board meeting was moved up to tomorrow afternoon. Richard tried to push it back, but the other board members demanded answers. They were curious, scared, and angry. They wanted to know who was stirring the pot and why. By noon, more reports landed on my desk. The numbers were worse than I expected. Bonuses that made no sense. Spending that looked like personal luxury. A leadership team that acted like the company was their private playground. This was not the company I saved. This was a company that had been rotting under comfort. I knew I needed the right person inside the company for the future. Someone competent. Someone respected by employees. Someone who did not play games. I reached out to Samantha Brooks, the VP of engineering. Samantha was brilliant. She was hardworking. She had been overlooked by the old boys club for years because she was not part of their social circle. I sent her a message. Samantha, I have been watching your work. You're the kind of leader this company needs. Let's talk. She replied quickly. Her tone was cautious, but hopeful. She had probably learned not to trust sudden attention. Having Samantha was important. She represented the future. Merit over connections. Results over politics. Emily kept messaging as the day went on. She asked if I was okay at home. She said Richard seemed stressed. She mentioned weird emails and sudden meetings. I kept my answers short. Calm. Unclear. Everything is fine, I told her. Tell Richard to relax. But I knew nothing was going to relax. That night, I drafted a message to the entire board. It was time to remind them who had real authority. I sent it. No more shadows. No more silence. The next morning, I dressed carefully. A charcoal gray suit, tailored sharp. The kind of suit that changes how people look at you before you even speak. Emily was already gone. She left early, trying to control the damage. Trying to manage the storm like she always did. As I drove to Atlas Dynamics headquarters, the skyline looked different. The city looked clearer, sharper, like I was seeing it through new eyes. I had walked those halls before, but always as the quiet husband, the extra guest at company parties, the man nobody remembered. Today, I was walking in as Jack Morgan, the majority owner. This was not Emily's world alone anymore. It was mine too. Marcus met me in the parking garage with a briefcase and a look that said he understood the weight of this moment. You ready? He asked. I have been ready for 15 years, I said. The elevator ride was silent. Floor after floor, the hum of the building felt like a drumbeat. When the doors opened on the executive floor, the air felt tighter, cleaner, colder. Richard Hayes was waiting. He was pacing, face pale. He tried to smile when he saw me. "Jack," he said, and extended his hand with forced enthusiasm. I looked at his hand, then at his face. "This is my company," I said firmly. Richard swallowed hard. His hand lowered slowly. He had no words. The boardroom doors opened, and I stepped inside. 5 board members sat around a massive mahogany table. Their faces showed confusion and irritation. They expected a routine meeting. They expected comfort. They did not expect me. I introduced myself. "Gentlemen," I said, "I am Jack Morgan." Recognition came slowly. One of them leaned forward, narrowing his eyes like he had seen my name somewhere long ago. Patricia Hensley, the only woman on the board, asked cautiously, "Jack Morgan, as in Orion Systems?" I nodded. "The very same." Then I sat at the head of the table like it was the most natural thing in the world because it was. I spread the financial reports across the table. The room grew quiet as they read. Executive bonuses that made their brows tighten. Expense reports that made them frown. Patterns that made them shift uncomfortably. Patricia looked up at me with sharp eyes. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Morgan." I nodded. "If even half is true, it means the company lost its way." Richard tried to speak, voice weak. "I'm sure we can address these issues through proper channels." I cut him off, not with anger, but with control. The proper channel is me taking direct oversight of the company I have owned all along. I pulled a formal notice from my briefcase and placed it on the table. Effective immediately, I said, I am exercising my right as majority shareholder to assume direct operational control of Atlas Dynamics. A murmur ran through the room. Surprise. Fear. Realization. I raised my hand for silence. Richard Hayes' resignation will be accepted immediately. Security will escort him from the premises by the end of the day. Richard's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His eyes darted around the room, searching for support that was no longer there. "And that is not all," I continued. "Chad Wilson's termination stands, and there will be more changes. We will overhaul the executive team. We will rebuild the culture. We will end favoritism. We will end entitlement." I turned toward the windows for a moment, looking out at the city. Somewhere in this building, Emily was sitting in her office, trying to hold her world together, still not fully understanding that I was the one rewriting the rules. The room held heavy silence. I gathered my documents and stood. Behind me, whispers started. Quick phone messages. Hushed conversations. Panic. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted truth. That evening, the board voted. One by one, the members raised their hands to accept Richard's resignation. Not a single hand hesitated. Even Patricia, who had been cautious earlier, raised hers firmly. She understood something basic about business. When the owner speaks, the room changes. Next, the board approved Chad's termination permanently. The golden boy who mocked me had become a corporate warning sign overnight. I stood again. "I am nominating Samantha Brooks as the new CEO of Atlas Dynamics." The silence was thick. One board member looked offended. "Samantha Brooks, from engineering. She has never held an executive position." I met his gaze. "She has never held that position because this company has promoted connections, not results. Samantha has been doing real work while others play politics. She is what Atlas needs." They voted. Unanimous. Change was no longer optional. 20 minutes later, Samantha arrived, still in work clothes. Khakis. Company polo. She looked out of place in a room full of suits, but her eyes were steady. I explained everything quickly. I watched her expression shift from shock to understanding to determination. "I want you to run this company with respect," I told her. "Respect for employees. Respect for clients. Respect for what Atlas can be." Tears rose in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She was not a woman who wanted pity. "I have watched this place from the trenches for years," she said softly. "I have wanted to fix it. Now I can." As the board members filed out, I saw Emily in the hallway. She stood pale, frozen, like she was witnessing a dream and a nightmare at the same time. For the first time, her gaze held something new. Respect. Maybe fear. Maybe regret. I walked past her without a word. I did not need to rub it in. Reality was doing that job for me. I made it 3 steps inside our front door before Emily exploded. She paced the living room like a caged animal. Mascara streaked down her cheeks now. She looked furious, shattered, and embarrassed all at once. "You embarrassed me," she yelled. "Do you have any idea what you did? Everyone is talking about me. They're saying I did not even know who my own husband was." I loosened my tie and hung my jacket on a chair. My movements were calm. Not because I did not care, but because I was tired. "Which one are you more worried about?" I asked. "That you laughed at your husband, or that people found out you did not know him?" Emily's voice cracked. "Do not turn this on me. I spent years building my reputation, and you destroyed it in one night." I looked at her, then at the room, then back at her. I suggested we sit down, but she kept pacing like sitting would make the truth heavier. She stopped, mouth opening and closing as if words were stuck. "That is not what I meant," she said quickly. "It was just office banter. It was awkward. I did not know what to do." "Harmless," I repeated slowly. "Chad calling me unemployed was harmless. Him asking what it feels like to be a loser was harmless. Your laughter was harmless." She shook her head, tears falling. I laughed because it was awkward. She insisted. What was I supposed to do? Cause a scene at a company dinner. I watched her and spoke quietly. You were supposed to defend your husband. Emily's shoulders dropped. She looked away. I did not know, she whispered. You did not want to know, I said gently. You let yourself believe I was just retired, just drifting, just a man living in your shadow. You liked that story because it made you feel powerful. Her sobs filled the room. I felt exhaustion more than anger. I wanted you to love me for who I am, I said, not for what I own. And when people thought I had nothing, they treated me like I was nothing, including you. Emily looked at me, broken and silent. Now you know, I said, and now we figure out what happens next. In the weeks that followed, Atlas dynamics changed fast. I started showing up regularly, not as Emily's quiet husband, but as Jack Morgan, the owner. People who once ignored me started greeting me carefully. Their smiles were different now. Their laughter was quieter. Samantha moved like a storm with a plan. She held open meetings. She demanded transparency. She reviewed contracts. She questioned spending. She opened channels for employees to report problems without fear. The company culture began to shift, slowly at first, then faster as people realized the old games no longer worked. Hard workers started getting noticed. Lazy managers started sweating. People who used fear as a tool lost their power. The toxic vibe that had grown under Richard's leadership began to fade. For the first time in years, Atlas Dynamics started to feel like the company I wanted it to be. Emily struggled through it all. Her world had flipped. She went from being the rising star with the quiet husband to being the woman who did not know her own partner. Some coworkers pitted her. Some judged her. Some treated her gently. Some treated her like a gossip story. At home, we were not magically fixed. Trust does not rebuild overnight. But something had changed. She saw me. Not the version she told herself, but the real me. 3 months later, I found myself back in the same ballroom where it all began. Same chandeliers. Same gold light. Same white tablecloths. But the energy was different. This time, it was an awards night celebrating company progress, projects completed, and teams recognized. The room felt lighter, not because people were richer, but because people felt safer. Samantha stood at the podium, confident now in a way she never had been before. Please welcome Jack Morgan, she announced. Applause filled the room. Warm applause. Real applause. Not mocking laughter. Not teasing. Just respect. Emily sat in the third row. She was dressed simply this time. No dramatic gown. No flashy performance. Her eyes stayed on me, quiet and serious. Our marriage was still healing. Some days were better than others. Some nights were silent. Some conversations ended in tears. But in that moment, I could see something in her face. Regret. And also understanding. I stepped to the microphone and looked across the room. 3 months ago, many of you learned something surprising about me, I said. Not only that I own Atlas Dynamics, but that I have been watching this company for a long time. I paused and let the room settle. Under Samantha's leadership, I continued. We have brought this company back to its real purpose. Hard work matters more than who you know. Respect is not just a sentence in a mission statement. It is how we treat each other. I gestured toward Samantha. We built opportunities where they used to be blocked. We cleaned up what was rotten. We protected what was good. Then I looked out over the faces. The sweetest revenge, I said, is not tearing something down. It is building something better than what hurt you. The room stayed quiet, attentive. So I ask you, I finished, when life tries to knock you down, do you stay silent and accept it, or do you rise up and reclaim what is yours? I stepped back from the microphone, and as the applause rose again, I knew one thing for sure. I was done being invisible, and anyone who laughed at me again would remember this night for the rest of their lives.